was just happening every time I reintroduced something. And at one point I was like, you know what, I have to start telling people about this, because if anybody else out there is having this kind of reaction, like, this is so isolating, it's driving me crazy. So I started like talking about diet because I felt guilty not.
Alright, RV renovation. This video is number 5. Today I'm hoping to tape off the edges and put some plastic down, because I'm going to be spraying some spray foam into the ceiling. And at least I'd like to at least get up to here. I've got some ceiling work and stuff that I need to do here probably before that happens. But in the meantime, we're just going to be listening to podcasts and filming the progress. Filming that progress.
So there's been miserable elements, but I mean, there's always going to be miserable elements to being more known. And the positive elements are so insanely positive that I wouldn't trade it. And I figured out how to deal with it a little bit, like block people on Twitter who are like basement dwellings.
What's your block rule?
Like,
what's your block rule? How do you get blocked by McKenna? Not that I'm trying to.
Oh, I don't stand any of that. Like, I had a comment the other day, which was just like, remember when you tried to lobotomize your dad? Like, that's just a comment. Yeah, those are the comments again. Like, you can just like, you got 30 followers. Like, that's such a cruel thing to say, especially considering he's doing podcast, like he's going on tour now. Like, that didn't happen. It wasn't remember when you tried, it was remember when you lobotomized your dad. So that was somebody who got blocked last week. But most of the people who get blocked are ones that either tell me I'm some sort of slut, or tell me I'm wrecking my dad's life. Oh. And it turns out there were only about maybe 15 people doing that, which isn't actually very many people. But if you get one person hounding you on social media, it feels like way more. So I probably blocked maybe 15 or 16 people, something like that. And then it was like, oh, Twitter's fine now. So it felt like I was so sensitive, because I was so, like, there was a lot of responsibility in pulling my dad out of the hospital. Like, that was a lot of weight. And so any kind of hope just exacerbated fears I already had. It's like, I don't need that.
No. Yeah, some people are remarkably persistent with it. Like, incredibly. Like, they'll follow you, even on multiple platforms, and they just wake up in the morning, and they're like, okay, it's time. I'm just going to go after this person. It's so bizarre to me from a psychological perspective. I have this thing which is like, it's a gift and a curse, which is that I'm so interested in trying to understand the human condition, right? Like, whether it's just how and why we do what we do individually and collectively, is why I'm interested in philosophy, politics, religion, culture, all of this stuff, because I'm just trying to understand human beings. And there are certain people with certain mentalities where I'm just like, I'm almost like I'm like studying the person who's trying to write, and I'm like, why are you like this? Like, what happened to you in your life that this is the way forward for you? You wake up in the morning and you're doing this consistently. It's not even just like, oh, it's a bad day. It's like, I'm going through your feed, and every single thing, going back for like a year, it's just going at this person, going at that person, going at that person. It's just bizarre to me.
Yeah, I've been trying to. It took me until, I feel like, way too late in my life to realize that I wasn't like everybody else. Like, no one's like everybody else. But I'm definitely not like everybody else. And I really didn't realize that until I was like 26 or 27. I was like, oh, I just assumed everybody thought like me. So when somebody acted differently than I would act in a certain situation, I was just like, what are you doing? Like, and it took a really long time. Did you know that you were different earlier?
That's a fantastic question. I think I had sort of 2 realizations. I think I had one as a child. I had one in my childhood where I was like, okay, I'm different to most people, especially in my teenage years. One thing with me is I've always been I've always kind of been how I am. Like, I've always been very strong-willed and very, like, immune to peer pressure. So even as a teenager, when like, you know, people were doing different things, you know, I don't know, whether it's trying smoking, or drugs, or what, like, I was just like, no, like, you can't get me to do something that doesn't make sense to me. Like, from smoking a cigarette to like wearing a mask outside, like, you can't get me to do it. Like, if it doesn't make sense to me, just because other people are doing it, I don't care. Like, that's not a reason for me. It has to make sense to me. And I've been like that since a kid. So I had one realization really young, and then I think, again, in my late 20s, especially when I started putting more of my thoughts out there publicly, because I've been on social media for a long time, for over a decade, and I've always used it to promote my music. But when I started putting more of my thoughts and ideas out there, I quickly realized, oh wow, you know, and people started gravitating towards me, just like, oh my gosh, like, you're a voice of reason, you know, like someone who's making sense throughout this thing. And I was like, oh, okay, is the way I think that rare? Like, I think that most, whether or not someone agrees with me on everything, I think I'm sensible and rational, and like I can explain what I do without being overly emotive about it. It's just like, okay, I believe this, and here's the explanation. But that was a second point where I realized, okay, I'm really different. And then over the past 14, 15 months, I'm like, okay, I'm really I'm really different. I go to the supermarket or whatever, I feel like I'm an alien or something, and I'm observing a whole different species now. The past 15 months have been wild.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of it's not exactly, like I said, I didn't clue until I was like 26. I'd had people tell me that I was different, for whatever, I don't know if that was a positive or negative thing. It's like, Michaela, you're out there, okay. But I didn't get that until I was, 26, and then it's been more and more obvious. And then, yeah, I would say COVID, just because of the split in opinions and fear, who's fearful, who's not fearful, and there's a huge divide in people. It's very, very interesting. And then I've also noticed that I'm extremely open, which comes at a cost, right? Because it's like everything is a good idea. So like everything's a good idea. I have to, like, I've made a rule where I'm like, okay, I shouldn't. If I'm interested in that in a week, then I'll continue it. Otherwise, I'll just be like, you know, I've got so many things going on. I have so many projects, and I'm like, it's too open. Like, hey, you want to travel over here? Yeah, okay, let's go. And we're going tomorrow. Okay, I'll move things around. And so I don't think that's, like, my brother, for instance. He's super smart, but he's like in Toronto. He lives near my parents. He has like a newborn and a dog and a wife, and they're all just pretty happy, like just being more stable, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think I would just go crazy.
Yeah.
Go crazier.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, people have such different personalities, and when you don't get to see all sides of it until people are put in certain situations either. That's something I've really, really learned. So in the past 15 months, you've seen how people respond to whether it's governmental authority or the potential threat of a disease or a pathogen or sickness. And you were talking before about people's fear, and it's not just the fear, it's also what people are afraid of. Right? So for me, from day one on this thing, I've had a much, much, much bigger concern, and you could say fear, of the level of governmental overreach and authoritarianism and tyranny than I ever did of any sickness or disease, right? And so that's the alarm bell I've been ringing. Whereas for other people, you know, the terror has been of other people, the fear of other people, right? Oh my gosh, everyone now is diseased.
Yeah, as if the government isn't other people. Like, government isn't some overarching thing filled with geniuses. It's literally just other people who somehow have more power. That's not necessarily a good thing. Yeah, I'm with you there. For the first while, like, I was in Florida, I was living with my dad, and my grandparents were there.
Okay.
And so when this thing first hit, I was so paranoid. I was like, it was the first month, there were like statistics, no one had any statistics, right? And I was like, okay, you know, for the first, I think I joked about it for a week, and then I was like, okay, this isn't going away. And I was paranoid to the level of, like, washing grocery.
Oh, wow.
Because I was thinking, I was worried, because I was like, if this is something, like, if this is something we don't know,
Yes.
we don't know what it could be like, and if I get it, maybe I'll be okay, but if I transmit it to I was living with 80-year-old grandparents,
Sure.
and my dad was like, he just had pneumonia. I was like, this is not good. That lasted for like maybe 3 or 4 weeks, like a reasonable amount of time that I thought, okay, where's the data? Like, what's going on? There's no, like, this isn't that bad, or people would be dying faster. And then it was like, we were in lockdown. I can't remember how long we were in lockdown. There was a while at the beginning. And then my dad was he was not doing well, and that was just so much worse than this, that got less and less and less. And then it started to affect the economy, and I was like, okay, so now we're seeing the economy being impacted. So it was within the first 2 months, I think, 2 or 3 months, I was like, okay, it's hitting the economy, this isn't good anymore, okay? Like, if it's been 3 months, and there aren't bodies in the street, then what are we doing? And then after that, I was like, okay, that's it. We've got some statistics. It doesn't look that bad. Like, I'm healthy. I'm not worried. Yeah, and so it did last. Like, I was very, very paranoid at the beginning because I was like, I can't deal with something on. Like, if my dad, you know what I was worried about? This is what I was worried about. I was worried that my dad would get sick and we'd take him to a North American hospital, and because he was like having such a difficult time with something called akathisia, so side effects from psych meds. I was like, if they use any type of sedative to calm him down in the hospital, he'll have a paradoxical reaction, and then they'll medicate that, and it'll just spiral out of control, which is what had happened before. So my main fear was him getting sick, going to a hospital, and then just exactly what we had seen in December, having to take him out of the hospital again. So that's why I was super, super paranoid, and then my grandparents were there. So it was a bit complicated.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. And I mean, look, everyone's got a different situation. That's the thing I've been saying for such a long time, is that people have very different situations and different risk factors, right? So if you're a 20-year-old who lives by themselves, right, that's a different situation to even a 20-year-old who lives with older parents or grandparents, or let alone the parents and grandparents themselves, etc. But also, by definition, and this especially actually even goes for elderly people who are the most vulnerable, it's like, you've made it this far, right? You've been doing risk analysis, and like, all human beings we're self-preserving, like, we're not out here trying to die. So, sure, if some crazy mega disease came out, which is like, got 50% death rate, and it's just blowing through the population, right? That's different, but it came out relatively early, certainly by this time last year, what the actual sort of statistics were and which demographics it was affecting. So it's like, okay, well, given this data, like, we know who needs protecting. We don't need to do this one size fits all. Let's just flatten everything in order to, in some people attempt to stop. And also just how ineffective it's all been. That's another thing.
Mainly.
Yeah.
It's just like, if it worked, it'd be one thing. Like, if it worked, then you could at least say this works. But instead you're saying, well, we have to just try harder. You guys aren't listening well enough. It's like, dude, how many times do you have to do the same thing and make things worse before you realize you need a different tactic?
Yeah, it's really
I'm so annoyed about Canada.
No,
because
tell me, because Canada's gone crazy.
Canada's gone completely nuts, and specifically, like, Quebec has it bad, but it's like specifically Toronto. So like the one place, like, in the entire world that's really insane right now is where I went, which is like, that sucks. Like, did it have to be Toronto? Really? But like I said, their business is boarded up. There's way more homeless people. It's really sad. They're tents. It's just, and everyone's terrified. That's mainly it. Like, people are terrified. Although it's been going on so long that some of the terrified people who are also kind of annoyed about it have just switched over to being angry. The protests are spreading, but I mean, they suggested that police stop people outside to identify why they're outside of their house. And the Toronto police said, no, we won't be doing that. So, like, there's a huge discrepancy happening right now. but things are happening when kids are being ticketed in parks. Like, and it's May. Like, we already had winter where everybody stays inside. Like, people have to get outside at some point, especially given the link between vitamin D and COVID. Like, get people into the sun. You don't really get it there.
Telling people to stay home was like the worst advice. Like, people should go outside, not stay home.
Yeah, and that's what the weird thing is. Like, we weren't that far away from a pandemic. Like, there was the Spanish flu, right? And that happened recently enough that we can kind of look at it, although it was way worse than COVID. And way worse.
Yeah.
But they told people to go outside. To go outside in the sun. Don't stay in.
But even in our lifetimes, there's been swine flu, SARS. Ebola didn't really hit the West.
That was scary, though.
But certainly SARS and swine flu and bird flu, those were all like, significant. And yeah, it's been really strange, and it's been so interesting to see how different localities have handled it, because it's almost like we're living in all these different realities. I mean, here in the UK, it looks like Canada is one of the places that's worse than the UK. But I mean, here, like, there's no epidemic in the UK. The numbers are already inflated, but there were three COVID-related deaths yesterday. 66 million people, 3 deaths, and people are still running around like scared and over 90%. I think over 90% of the people over 60 are vaccinated. Over half the general population. Overnight, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like, what are we? Okay, guys, it's over. Like, nationally, I'm not saying in the whole world, because people are, oh, but what about India? What about India? I'm like, bro, we're in England, so I can understand. Okay, India, but like, there's no epidemic here. Like, there's no epidemic. More people died from suicide yesterday. More people died from basically everything than died from this thing yesterday. So why is all the focus still here? Like, it's been so long now.
People are slow. Like, everything in the government is slow. Like, all of these changes are going to require meetings, and then people who meet are going to have to go talk to people above them, and the people above them are going to have to talk to people above them, and then they're going to have to be like, well, I don't know, well, maybe we'll give it a couple weeks, and then that has to get put back down to the, like, minions, and then disseminated to the media, and then, like, everything is so slow. At least you guys have the vaccination rollout. Like, Canada's vaccination rollout was like third world country level. It's like, what have you been focusing on the last year? Like, what we needed to focus on was getting vaccines into the country, assuming you're one of the people who are going to get vaccinated. That should be your goal as the government. Like, if there's a pandemic, focus on getting that into the country. They're like, oh yeah, well, we forgot. Like, sorry, we focused on what? Like, sorry, we don't have any. How do you not have any? This was your one job. God. Anyway, it seems to be rolling out in Canada. Like, they said, everyone's eligible for a vaccine by the end of May. And so, everybody who wants to get one is going to go get one. And I'm assuming that they started with the older population, so everyone's about 80, 70, 60. I don't know what the vaccines are like, but at least they can get them now. So at least, old folks will freaking be able to see their families again. Hopefully soon. Like,
it's been wild. It's been so myopic. It's been so myopic and tunnel vision, just like as if this is the only thing that kills people, and like this is. I mean, they did some surveys, and like it's interesting. I think something like I saw this from the U.S., especially because there's such a partisan split on the issue, and it was something like over 50% of Democrats think that if you get COVID, that the hospitalization rate is 50% or more. Right? They like how bad people think it is. Yeah, how bad people think, and they think that I think the majority of Democrats believe the death rate is over 10%, whereas the majority of Republicans think it's closer to. So, but again, it's because of the news people watch, right? So if you've been sitting there for the past 18 months watching CNN and MSNBC or whatever, and having all your local politicians, pushing all these policies or whatever, people have been made to think that it's way, way, way more severe and deadly than it actually is. Like, people have been scared out of their wits. And then there's like a whole other side. So it's almost like people are living in these alternate realities. You've got people in Florida, Texas, Georgia, like they're just chilling and having pool parties, and going to nightclubs and stuff. And then I've heard that in like New York, for example, it's, you know, even if you're outside without a mask on, like people are screaming at you and stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, that's so nutty.
I know, it's very nutty. It's very nutty being like, I don't really like this country isn't doing it for me anymore. Maybe I'll just go to a different country where it's not like this. Like, it's weird coming from North America where it's supposed to be like land of the free. It's where people who have hard times go. And it's weird being like, okay, that's not looking so good anymore. I'm going to go elsewhere. Like, we were in Serbia, and Serbia was great.
Really?
I was like, oh, I don't want to go back to Canada. That's just a weird, it makes me so angry because, like, you've got everything, you have a country, it's running well, you have everything set up, it's peaceful. You're just going to fuck it up. Like, it's hard to get to that point, and now, I mean, hopefully it'll just go back to normal, and maybe it will. But it's been quite a long time to shut down businesses. A lot of people have lost a lot of money. And people, I think, have lost a lot of trust in the government from both sides, right? So, I don't know. I'm more pessimistic about the state of North America.
It's sad.
Dubai.
Yeah, it is sad. Because, like you said, I mean, the Western world has fought so hard to make so many strides, and
freedoms, yeah,
and it's crazy. You know, people used to fight for freedom. Now, if you fight for freedom, you're the bad guy. That's been the weirdest thing to me over the past years. Like, I've been trying to fight to uphold people's rights and civil liberties, and that's somehow made me the enemy to so many of my countrymen and even people overseas. It's like people are so desperate to lose their rights and to have everyone else is taken. You know, that person should have to do this and shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Yeah, it's like lose your own rights. If you don't want to lose your rights, go ahead. Like, lose your rights. Stay inside your house, freaking order food, have groceries delivered to your door, watch Netflix, wear a mask, do whatever you want. Just don't bug me about it. Like, I'm not bugging you about it. Maybe I'm bugging you about it on social media. Like, just don't take away my rights for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think you're going to have a lot of, I don't know, I think there's going to be some interesting migrations over the next few years. I think you're going to see a lot of people moving out of big cities and more into suburbia or the middle of nowhere. I see a big exodus from major cities. That's going to happen. And I also think you're going to have an increasing number of people immigrating from so-called first world countries to so-called second and third world countries for a lot of reasons, especially people who are able to be a bit more nomadic like we are.
I mean, we're in a bit of a different situation, right?
We are.
Because we've got, like, online sources of income. I mean, I'm not saying other people can't have that. I'm just saying a lot of people don't have that. You can have that. But it's hard, and a
lot of people are even if people are still employed. I mean, a lot of people have shifted to remote working, and I've seen that in different countries, like in Dubai, in places like Barbados. I've seen that they're introducing new types of visa, so that you can work from home. Yeah, exactly. So I think that hopefully will be, I guess, what is a positive that comes out of this. But it is disheartening to see countries which supposedly were supposed to be the bastions of freedom, UK, USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. I mean, people are there talking about, oh my gosh, Australia and New Zealand have handled it so well. I'm like, they can't leave their country. Like, you can't leave New Zealand, so I don't know if that's handling it well, like making it illegal to leave the country. I mean, sure, you have a lower death rate. I mean, you've also got 20 people on an island in the middle of nowhere, so you can't really compare it to a lot of other places, but to me, I'm like, that's not good. Like, that's not handling it well. That's just going authoritarian, like, properly. And people don't like the terms authoritarian and totalitarian.
Oh my God,
if we're not using, but if we're not using them now, like, when do we use them? Like, the government is literally telling you cannot go outside your house, you can't see your friends, you can't see your family, you're not allowed to hug people, you're not allowed to open your business, you can't travel, you can't leave. How is that not totalitarian? Like, that's literally, even during wartime, they don't have all these rules.
Yeah, part of the reason we left too was because, you know, they opened up slightly and then they were like, oh my God, the second wave, and I was like, oh no, like, right now, if you have business, you can leave the country to certain countries.
Okay.
And I was like, if they do another stay-at-home mandate, and because there were talks coming out, they're like, we're not doing the lockdown properly, even though we've been in a stay-at-home mandate for like 3 or 4 months, which is a very long time. They're like, we're not doing it properly. We're going to have to impose stricter rules. And then they have this quarantine. I mean, you guys have a quarantine too, and lots of countries have a quarantine, but they have this quarantine. And I was like, oh my god, are they going to shut down airports? Am I going to be stuck in this stupid city for, I don't know, 3 more months or 4 more months? I was like, I'm just going to go and wait, because it'll probably fix itself eventually. It's just sad that it got to that point and that nobody freaked out about it.
I think you made the right move. So, Michaela, what else have you got coming up? So you're working on your book. Of course, you've got your podcast, which is going and growing and doing really well. What else do you have on the horizon?
Man, I have an app. I'm working on an app with my dad and one of his graduate students, PhD graduate students, and it's on resilience. So what it does, I'm really excited about this. What it does is it helps you identify areas in your life that need work. So it'll like how's your career going, or your love life, or your health, or there's like 8 categories to identify where you want to focus. And then it breaks that down further so you can identify, like my job is what's causing most of my distress. And then it runs you through ways to solve your problem.
Okay.
It's also going to have a bit of it's going to be able to allow you to connect with someone so that you can have someone who is like your accountability partner if you want. But I think that it'll be out in about 4 months. We're calling it AIM.
AIM, okay.
And I think it's going to be good. It's still in the early stages. Like, I just took a look at the wireframe, and we're still going back and forth on exactly what we want to be in it. But we're very excited about that.
Awesome. And what about the book? Do you have a plan for when that's going to come out?
Well, I have a publishing company. It's Libra, and Tucker Max is like on the board there.
Oh, interesting.
He has this company called Scribe, but he has this other company called Libra. I'm gonna go with them. They're just way better than regular publishers, in my opinion. So I'm going with them. I'm going to finish it up in the next month. Then it's going to be a hell of a lot of editing, because I think half of it needs to be just thrown away. I need to give it to someone and say, like, how much of this is interesting and how much of it is just trauma. Just get rid of stuff. So that's the next step. But in the next year, I should have an app out. I should have my book out. My podcast is growing, and then I'm still running my dad's the online products and social media and touring and books. So it's a lot, but it's fun right now.
Awesome. Michaela, always good to talk to you. It's really good to have you on the show, and we will talk again soon.
We should. Thank you, Zuby, for inviting me.
That's another thing that would be quite pleasant, would be quite pleasant, would be quite pleasant. So that's what happens in Sleeping Beauty. That's the story of 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 Sleeping Beauty. yeah, well, none of this is pleasant, and nothing that happens in that story is pleasant. So Sleeping Beauty, she's naive as hell. They put her out in the forest and have her raised by these goody two-shoes fairies. And the first idiot prince that wanders by, she falls in love with so badly that she has post-traumatic stress disorder, really rides on on his horse. That's what happens. Then she goes into the castle and she's all freaked out because she had the love of her life. 5 minutes. That's when the spinning wheel, that's the wheel of fate, pops up and she pricks her finger. They try to get rid of all the spinning wheels. They try to get rid of all the wheels of fate with the pointed end. She finds and pricks her finger, falls down unconscious. Well, she wants to be unconscious, and no bloody wonder. She was protected her whole life. She's so damn naive that her first love affair just about kills her. She wants to go to sleep and never wake up. Never wake up. Never wake up. She wants to go to sleep and never wake up. And so that's exactly what happens. And then she has to wait for the prince to come and rescue her. You think, how sexist can you get? That's a boneheaded way of looking at the story, because the prince isn't just a man who's coming to rescue the woman. The prince also represents the woman's own consciousness. That's the story of Sleeping Beauty. 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 Without that forward-going, courageous consciousness, a woman herself will drift into unconsciousness and terror. All she can do is lay there and sleep, like the sleep of the naive and damned. She has to wake herself up, bring her own consciousness, her own masculine consciousness into the forefront so that she can survive in the world. Unless the woman is taken out of man, so to speak, then she isn't a human being. She's just a creature, and that's partly what's embedded in this story. So you don't want to read it as a patriarchal. You don't want to read anything that way.
That means in practice then, that when you hand over your vocation in life, which is called your Swadharma, that means Sva, that's the same as the Latin. Suus, one's own. Dharma means function. Your own function, or we would call your vocation. When you've completed it, you drop out, you drop out, you drop out. And become nobody. Now, naturally, caste, holy men, and all that kind of thing can be exploited. Anything can be exploited. And abused. So we can look at it all and say, what a mess. Why don't you do something for yourself? Why don't you kill the sacred cows that eat them? Why don't you clean up? Why do you commit all this disease? I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted. Let's try and see something from another point of view for a change. I'm not saying that we should do what the immortals do, but just look at it from another point of view. And they would smile at us and say, you really think it's as real as all that? Have you never experienced what's on the inside of this game? See, the trouble with you Westerners is you never experienced this. You never got down to the root of reality. You don't know that state of consciousness. And so you're frantically trying to patch everything up and bring it all together and screw the universe up so that it's fixed. You can never do it. Or you're going to go wildly rushing around and creating trouble. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted. Western-educated Hindus think the same way. They are now for rushing around and patching India up. And what's going to happen is they're going to arm all the millions of people in India. And they're going to create a lot of trouble in Asia one of these days when they become a powerful society. When you read Milton's Paradise Lost, long before Lucifer decided to rebel, the whole of heaven was armed, and he describes the legions of angels with their escutcheons and gonfalons and military deportment. Who was looking for trouble? Who was looking for trouble? I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted. So the Hindu looks at our Christianity and sort of thinks, my goodness. Here is the eternal self. But in the idea of Christianity, the Godhead is having a real bar. Because not only is he incarnating himself, say, as some wretched beggar, but he's incarnated himself as a Christian soul who believes that in this one short life he will decide his eternal destiny. And the possibilities of making a mistake are far greater than of being a lousy beggar. The possibility involved in the Christian gamble is to fry in hell forever, and ever and ever and ever. Even the Avicii hell at the bottom of the America only goes on for about one cowbell. But the everlasting damnation, what an idea. So the Hindu says, bravo, you know. God has really done it down on himself this time. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted, any dream you wanted.
Akira the Don is a British musician, DJ, and producer. He's worked in genres as diverse as pop, hip-hop, indie, dance, and more recently, perhaps, something that has come to be known as cleaning waves.
I cut the speech up with the beat, added some crack and vinyl. The older I get, the more I know just how little I know. Most men living one bad day away from being a wino. Many sing along, but how many can hit the high notes? But for the grace of God, go I know. Hello, hi, pretty fly for someone from such a place as I. You might not walk, but you might fly, because we live in such a time. It's a beautiful thing to be alive. I'm alive. Gonna make it recorded human history, hit that shout.
chosen for its emotional and conceptual appropriateness from some of my sayings and my talks. Akira has also produced similar works featuring Alan Watts, Jocko Willink, Terence McKenna, David Foster Wallace, and Elon Musk, among others. So, welcome, Akira. It's nice to talk to you. What are you up to?
Everything I did was for someone else to like me. It wasn't until I started reading
like having health issues, AD, my mom not being around. Great mom, but she was doing her thing. I can blame a lot of people. And that's the book I was reading. And I put it off like everybody else. And when it's like, you know what, for me to fix this, I gotta read what the fuck is wrong with these guys. And I blame anybody. Read my book, it's okay. I'm afraid of my shadow. How can I overcome that? Go in the military, get your ass kicked, do things you hate to do, be uncomfortable every fucking day of your life. Why is that? I'm not the smartest kid in the world. Okay. If there's no one saying, oh my God, you're smart. No, don't say that to yourself. I said to myself, no, I'm a dumb motherfucker. Okay, why is that? How do you get smarter? Educate yourself. So the things that we learn from the truth. We learn from the truth, man. So the only way I became successful was going towards the truth. As painful and brutal as it is, it changed me. It allowed me to become, in my own right, who I am. I speak from suffering. I speak from suffering. The only way you're ever going to get to the other side of this journey is you have got to suffer. To grow. To grow, you must suffer. I speak from suffering. Monks used to keep skulls on their dead. The people nowadays think that was very morbid. Everything's falling apart. But don't try and stop it. When you're falling off a precipice, it doesn't do you any good back onto a rock that's falling with you. See? Well, everything is doing that. So again, this is another case of our completely wasting our energy in trying to prevent the world from falling apart. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. And then you'll be able to do something interesting with the free energy. With the free energy. With the free energy. Don't do it. When the Hindu says everything is unreal, the Westerner reacts and says, no, we can't treat life as a dream. It's serious, it's real, it's for real. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Well, how real do you want it to be? This is, in other words, everything, insofar as it's falling apart, everything is changing, it is like smoke. And we all feel that smoke has a lesser degree of reality than wood. It's an image of the evanescent, of the ghostly. So it's this idea the whole world is this mirage. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's only bad if you cling to it, if you try to lean on it. But if you don't lean on it, it's a grand illusion. So the word Maya means not only illusion, but it means art, it means magic, and it means creative power. So this is the big act. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. And then you'll be able to do something interesting with the free energy. With the free energy. With the free energy. Don't do it. And it's perhaps easier to feel the world in that way in a tropical country where death is very common and where you just watch things dissolve before your eyes and yet burst out and grow again. The whole world is changing. Maybe easier to think that way than in our environment. Although when you're out in California, The human landscape changes so fast that no town is the same for 2 years. Any mailing list that you have changes 1/3 addresses per annum. Nothing stays put. The hills are shadows and they flow from form to form and nothing stands.
The substance of trees is carbon. That comes from the air. It's carbon dioxide from the air. People look at trees and they think it comes out of the ground. The plants grow out of the ground. But it is where the substance comes from. You find out where does it come from. Trees come out of the air. They surely come out of the air. No, they come out of the air. No, they come out of the air. The carbon dioxide in the air goes into the tree and it changes it, kicking out the oxygen and pushing the oxygen away from the carbon and leaving the carbon substance with water. Water comes out of the ground. Only came out of the air, didn't it? Down from the sky. So most of the trees, almost all of the trees, is out of the ground. That's not, it's out of the air. Now, of course, I told you, the oxygen and carbon stick together very tight. How is it that trees so smart manage to take the carbon dioxide, the carbon oxygen nicely combined, and undo that? Light has some mysterious force. No, the sun is shining. And it's the sunlight that comes down and knocks the oxygen away from the carbon. So it takes sunlight to get the plant to work. And so the sun, all the time, is doing the work of separating the oxygen away from the carbon. The oxygen is some kind of terrible byproduct, which it spits back into the air, and leaving the carbon and water and stuff to make the substance of the tree. Then when we take the substance of the tree and stick it in the fire, there's all the oxygen made by these trees. And all the carbon would much prefer to be close together again. And once you let the heat to get it started, it continues and makes an awful lot of activity while it's going back together again. And all this nice light and everything comes out. And everything is being undone, you're going back to carbon oxygen, back to carbon dioxide. And the light and heat that's coming out, that's the light and heat of the sun that went in. The sun that went in. So it's sort of stored sun that's coming out when you burn the log. So it's sort of stored sun that's coming out when you burn the log.
I came from a horrible background. I got called nigger every day of my life growing up.
from where I lived. One of the high-ups in the KKK son sat behind me in 2 classes. They called me nigger all the time. Got my first car. They spray-painted nigger, we're gonna kill you on it. I was just an insecure, scared kid. The only way I could find myself was to put myself through the worst thing possible. Suffering. 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 No one was helping me out. My dad and my mom kind of irregular. So she worked 3 jobs, went to college 4 times, so she's never around. One time this person drew a picture of me and, said, we're gonna kill you nigger on my staff notebook. And I took it to my principal. And my principal said they saw nigger Niger. That was the best advice he could give me. So long story short, what I realized was no one was here to help me. I started shaking my head when I was 16 years old. And the feeling I had every morning, I looked in the mirror, was horrible. And I didn't want to feel like that anymore. And all I felt was a kid going nowhere, a kid that was scared. And most kids will accept that and look for help. But the best thing that happened to me, no one helped me. No one felt sorry for me. No one looked at me and said, like, this day and age, they'll take you in and they'll say, everybody, stop picking on this person. Back then, they didn't care. The KKK marched in a 4th of July parade. Suffering. 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 And my mom cared about me, but my dad took our soul. And she, did the best she could. I had to figure out I wasn't going to be a punk kid all my life. So the way I could turn it around was to suffer. I had to build calluses in my brain the same way I built calluses on my hands. What I realized is for me to become the man I wanted to become, I saw myself as the weakest person God ever created. But I never blamed God for anything he did to me. So I wanted to change that to be the hardest man ever created. Am I that? I don't know, but you had to have a goal. And my goal when I was sitting there, not going to school, being bullied, having no self-esteem, my goal was the only person that could turn this person around is me. The only way I can turn around is put myself through the worst things possible a human being can ever endure. And that'd be the only way that I can build this brain to handle anything that comes in front of it. Callousing my mind. Through pain and suffering. Through pain and suffering. What's the answer to the meaning of life? Here's an answer. I was trying to solve this terrible puzzle about how it was that human beings got themselves in such a tangle about what they believed. Such a tangle that we were pointing the ultimate weapons of destruction at one another, which, by the way, we are still doing. I thought, okay, well, I understand that. We need our belief systems. They orient us. And that means there will be conflict between belief systems, and that can be a catastrophe. And that's being played out everywhere, again, in very many ways. What's the solution to that? Well, one possibility is there's no solution. It's just mayhem all the way around. Could be the case. But it seemed to me, as I delved into it, that the proper solution to that was to live properly. As an individual, you're more powerful than you think. Way more powerful. God only knows what you are in the final analysis. You're more powerful than you think. Way more powerful. You're blind to your own weaknesses, but you're also blind to your own strengths. And so then I think, well, if you got your act together, it'd be better for you, and instantly it would be better for your family, assuming they wanted you to get your act together, and not everyone does. And then it would be better for the community. But how far could you take that? If you stopped wasting time, if you stopped lying, if you oriented yourself to the highest possible good that you could conceive of, and you committed to that, how much good could you do? Well, I would say, why don't you find out? So, that's what I think you should do. You should find out. You're more powerful than you think. Way more powerful. God only knows what you are in the final analysis. You're more powerful than you think. Way more powerful. You're blind to your own weaknesses, but you're also blind to your own strengths. Maybe you could sort yourself out so that you want nothing but the good. And then maybe you could help make that manifest in the world. Maybe we wouldn't have all these terrible problems then. At least we'd have fewer of them, and that would be a start. 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 The answer to the problem of humanity is the integrity of the individual. You're more powerful than you think. Way more powerful. God only knows what you are in the final analysis. You're more powerful than you think. Way more powerful. You're blind to your own weaknesses, but you're also blind to your own strengths. That's the answer. So, and then you think, well, what's the barrier? And the barrier is, are you willing to accept responsibility? And part of the answer to that is, reduce the damn responsibility until it's tolerable. You don't have to fix everything at once. You can just start by fixing the things that you can fix. You can do it with even less self-sacrifice. You can start by fixing only the things that you want to fix. God, you can get a massive way that way. So, do it. See what happens. That's what you should have been taught right from the beginning. Aim at the highest good. Tool yourself into something that can attain it. And go out there and manifest it in the world. Everything that comes your way will be. Everything that comes your way will be a blessing. Everything that comes your way will be a blessing. Everything that comes your way will be a blessing. Everything that comes your way will be a blessing.
Think of camouflage. The chameleon who changes its color. Think of the butterfly pretending it has eyes. Think of the flower. Same for the bee. Bee says, wow. But then that means that the bee has to be. Has to go on living and all the trouble it takes to go around collecting honey and raising other bees and organizing itself and doing that dance which tells the other bees there's more honey. It's all it has to do. The flower is deceptive. Life is a drama, and a drama is a deception. the big act. When you peel an onion and you don't really understand the nature of an onion, you might look for the pit in the center, like any ordinary fruit has. But the onion doesn't have a center. It's all skins. So when you get right down, there's nothing but a bunch of skins. You say, well, that was kind of disappointing. But of course you have to understand that the skins are the part that you eat. But in rather than aim at easy mind when you explore yourself and your motivation, you go through and through and you try to find out that thing which really is genuine. That thing which really is genuine. But in rather than aim at easy mind when you explore yourself and your motivation, you go through and through and you try to find out that thing which really is genuine. That thing which really is genuine. That's why in Zen, discipline, they give you koans which require a perfectly genuine act. An act of total and absolute sincerity. And people knock themselves out trying to do this thing. But they always know that the master's going to catch them. Because he reads their thought.
Yeah.
You know that story of the one fight about the man who had a fight with a bear, and the bear would read his thoughts? So that the only way of hitting the bear was to do so not on purpose. Because the bear would know in advance. So it's the same in working with a Zen master. You have to do the genuine act, not on purpose. But since you're put in a situation where it's rather formal, and you're supposed to do it on purpose, you're stuck, see? So you explore the onion, and you go in and in and in, and then you find, well, it's all deception. But in rather than you find when you explore yourself and your motivation, you go through and through and you try to find out that thing which really is genuine. That thing which really is genuine. But in rather than you find when you explore yourself and your motivation, you go through and through and you try to find out that thing which really is genuine. That thing which really is genuine. Let's look at this thing from another point of view, which you will at first think highly depressing. Let's suppose that we can't do anything to change ourselves. Suppose we're stuck with it. Now that is the worst thing an American audience can hear. There's no way of improving yourself, because every kind of culture in this country is dedicated to self-improvement. Just take jogging, that deplorable practice. It's a very nice thing to run and to go dancing across the hills at a fast speed.
Do you believe that I can already feel the difference that they make?
Shaking their bones, rattling their brains, running on their heels. There's a grimness about it. It's determinedly good for you. Why do you go to school? The whole point of coming to school is that you're interested in something. You don't come to improve yourself. But the trouble is that the schools got the wrong idea. They gave people honors for learning. The reward for studying French should be the ability to speak French and enjoy reading and having fun with French people. But when you get a degree point, then the degree becomes the point. In a game of one-upmanship. And of course, one-upmanship is the main business of the educational community today. You learn all the rules how to be a good professor.
Let's be happy now. Let's see. Let's say I hope I'm finding happiness. Well, for me, I can realize certain things in my work. I come close to being happy, and I can say it also like my life. So it only happens, I think, in moments, and that's when I'm working, and I'll be able to fulfill a scene, hopefully, and I think I'm happy. So I find it very stimulating to keep studying and working, but I'm not just generally happy. If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable. I'm not just generally happy. If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable. I'm not just generally happy. If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable. I don't know. Sometimes. I don't know. I think sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. It's just natural, I guess, for everyone. I would like to be more sociable than I am. On some days. Sometimes I chat when I'm not pleased, but sometimes the work itself requires more, that I'm quiet and to myself more. And other days, like being a musical member, I try not to get too, I like to be more outgoing, because that's what I have to express, and so I try to keep it general. I try. Even if I feel like I'm not, I try to make the effort to make contact with people around me. Yes, because I could easily be alone. It doesn't bother me to be alone. Some people I know they don't like to be alone. I don't mind it. I really there's a rest, and yeah, it kind of refreshes and stuff. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to be generally happy. If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable. I'm not just generally happy. If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable. Yeah, sometimes there's two things in human beings that they, and I think there's even myself, that they want to be alone, but they also want to be together. And I think I have also a gay side to me, also a sad side. And I think that's where people also, if there is something in people, they need solitude. For a while.
Akira. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. This happens to me a lot with my tweet storms. I've actually come up with a whole bunch of additional tweet storms besides the ones that are already out there, but sometimes I just hesitate, or I just pause, and then it just dies. And what I've learned is, if I'm inspired to write a blog post or to publish a tweet storm, I should probably do it right away. Otherwise, it's not going to get out there. I will come back to it. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. 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 Do it right then and there, bro. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. Inspiration is a beautiful and powerful thing, and when you have it, just seize it. Inspiration is a beautiful and powerful thing, and when you have it, just seize it. Impatience with actions and patience with results. That's actually a good philosophy for life. Anything you have to do, just get it done. Why wait? You're not getting any younger. Your life is slipping away. You don't want to spend it waiting in line, traveling back and forth. You're doing things that you know ultimately aren't part of your mission. You do them. You want to do them as quickly as you can while you do them well with your full attention. But then you just have to give up on the results. You have to be patient with the results because you deal with complex systems, you deal with lots of people. It takes a long time for markets to adopt products. It takes time for people to get comfortable working with each other. It takes time for great products to emerge as you polish away, 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 polish away. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. 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 Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. If I have a problem that I discover in one of my businesses that needs to be solved, I basically won't sleep until at least the resolution is in motion. And this is just personal feeling, but if I'm on the board of a company, I'll call the CEO. If I'm running the company, I'll call my reports. If I'm responsible, I'll get on there right then and there and solve it. If I don't solve a problem the moment it happens, or I don't start moving towards solving it when it happens, I have no peace, I have no rest, I have no happiness until that problem is solved. So solve it as quickly as possible. I literally won't sleep until it's solved. So solve it as quickly as possible. I literally won't sleep until it's solved. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. 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 Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there.
I can do this right now. Don't you understand? I can do this right now. I'll do it in my sleep now. Still got me on. I'll fix it with the
I think that's a personal characteristic, but it's worked out well in business.
People look for the shortcut, the hack. If you came here looking for that, you won't find it. The shortcut is a lie. Renovation, discipline. Discipline. There must be discipline. 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 There must be How do you become stronger, smarter, faster, healthier? How do you become better? How do you achieve true freedom? There's only one way. The way of discipline.
Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Do not do things that you hate. Act so that you can tell the truth about how you act. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. If you have to choose, be the one who does things instead of the one who is seen to do things. Pay attention. Assume that the person you are listening to might know something you need to know. Listen to them hard enough so that they will share it with you. Plan and work diligently to maintain the romance in your relationships. Be careful who you share good news with. Be careful who you share bad news with. Make at least one thing better every single place you go. Imagine who you could be, and then aim single-mindedly at that. Do not allow yourself to become arrogant or resentful. Try to make one room in your house as beautiful as possible. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Work as hard as you possibly can on at least one thing and see what happens. If old memories still make you cry, write them down carefully and completely. Maintain your connections with people. Do not carelessly denigrate social institutions or artistic achievement. Treat yourself as if you were someone that you are responsible for helping. Ask someone to do you a small favor so that he or she can ask you to do one in the future. Make friends with people who want the best for you. Do not try to rescue someone who does not want to be rescued. And be very careful about rescuing someone who does. Nothing well done is insignificant. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Dress like the person you want to be. Be precise in your speech. Stand up straight. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. Don't avoid something frightening if it stands in your way, but don't do unnecessarily dangerous things. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Do not transform your wife into a maid. Do not hide unwanted things in the fog. Notice that opportunity lurks where responsibility has been abdicated. Read something written by someone great. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. Do not bother children when they are skateboarding. Don't let bullies get away with it. Write a letter to the government. You see something that needs fixing. I propose a solution. Remember that what you do not yet know is more important than what you already know. Be grateful. In spite of your suffering.
Williamson, the British Army officer who was there. For weeks we had lived in flooded trenches. The Germans were 80 yards away. Our trench was enfiladed. We lost many men, shot by snipers. Night after night, since the tailing off of the Battle of Ypres, we had toiled in the parapets, filling sandbag with clayey mud, squelched through muddy lagoons of woodland tracks, carrying rations, duck boards, pumps, and ammunition. We were volunteers, rushed out to help General French's shattered expeditionary force. A few weeks before, we'd been schoolboys, bank clerks, undergraduates, medical students. Now our lives were ravaged. Some of us, the young ones who thought of their mothers, were near to despair. Without hope, without horizon. At first, trench life had been interesting, even enjoyable. It was fun cooking our own bacon and making tea in the wood while shrapnel cracked overhead. Good sport stalking the wild geese in the marshes, satisfying to feel the soft hairs of our unshaven chins. The regulars were decent chaps, heroes of Mons. But the rains fell, and the trenches filled almost waist high. After a few days, we could scarcely move our legs, nor did we seem to need food. At night we dragged ourselves out of the ditches and moved about, uncaring of bullets aimed at random in the dark. All night we worked, carrying parties, pumping fatigues, parapet building. At dawn we slid in the water again, and set ourselves to endure the gray daylight. Even now, so long afterwards, when I hear rain on the tiles overhead, the ghost of that time makes me draw the blankets closer around my neck. On Christmas Eve of 1914, we were in the support line about 200 yards inside the cloak steer wood. It was freezing. Our overcoats were as stiff as boards, our boots were too hard to move, but we rejoiced as the mud was hard too. Also, we thought we would be able to sleep that night. Inside a new blockhouse of oak boughs and sandbags called Piccadilly Hotel. No bed but the cold earth, no blankets even, but sleep. Sleep. Then came a message from brigade headquarters, brought I think by 2nd Lieutenant Bruce Barron's father of the Warwicks. Wiring parties were required in no man's land. And there would be a moon. We would have to work only 50 yards from the German machine guns in the White House opposite the eastern edge of the wood. 2 hours later, we filed out of the dark trees into the naked, moonlit terror of no man's land, holding our shovels besides our faces in hope of protection against the expected mortar blast. The moon was high and white among the frozen clouds. We were visible. Someone slipped with the clank of a spade or rifle. We flung ourselves on our faces and waited. But the battlefield was as silent as the moon. For an hour, we worked in silence,
$300.
in a most mysterious soundlessness. What had happened? We began to talk naturally as we drove in stakes and pulled out concertinas of prepared wire. There was no rifle fire, either up or down the line. From way up north, beyond Ypres, to south, beyond Armentières and the French army.
I encounter self-transforming elf machines, which are creatures, entities, perhaps, although they're not made out of matter. They're made out of attached, driving violence. It's one of the most challenging parts of the whole psychedelic landscape. Most people can accept the idea of disordered sensory input, discovering sensory material. What are we to do with an elf? You know, that becomes a little harder to contextualize in psychoanalytic theory, although Jung did a good job when he said autonomous elements can escape from the psyche's control and present themselves as independent entities. I'm not sure he's ever seen a self-transforming elf machine. It's the defining characteristic of the true DMT flash. I mean, it is not subtle. These things mob you like badly trained Rottweilers. They come bounding forward by the dozens, by the hundred. They jump into your body. They jump out of your body. I mean, it maps to some degree over the archetype of the little people, the leprechaun, the fae, and being Irish and being Jungian. I'm willing to entertain, you know, maybe I have a special relationship to this stuff. But then in the Amazon, the people using DMT that I studied, the reason they did it, they said, was to speak with the little people. Was to speak with the little people. What are we to do with an elf? 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 What puzzles me about my contact with these beings, it conforms to, let's say, the Irish model. They are small, full of merriment, almost to a manic and frightening level. It's sort of like a Bugs Bunny cartoon gone berserk. They are friendly, but play rough. It's a land of explosions and falling anvils. The overwhelming feeling is love, this kind of crazy, childish affection, and they're delighted to have me in their presence. These entities have an agenda. It's a very curious agenda. They use a language which you see. It is made out of sound, but you see it. And the entire point of the encounter seems to be to teach you to do this. They want you to transform your language. They want you to speak elfish. You know what? If you've never done DMT and you just smoked it and you're 30 seconds into contrast between the words we use, explicit and implicit. They're very valuable words. What is explicit? What's on the outside? That's how we come on publicly. Explicitly, we are thus and so. We have a fight. We're in competition, say in business, explicitly. But implicitly, we've worked this out. We have agreed in a secret way that nobody knows about that this competition is extremely valuable for, take it politically, for example. Let's take the situation of Russia versus the United States. Explicitly, in public, this has to be a big fight. These two ways of life, these two ideologies are opposed. They say, no, we're... But behind the scenes, it's all been carefully worked out. You bet it has. That this opposition has to happen. Because our economy depends on it. And their economy depends on it. And everybody knows this who's smart. So there are a lot of people who get taken in by the propaganda, and they should be taken in because that makes the thing work. It's crazy. But that's the way it goes. 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 And everything works this way. When swans start to mate, they're not sure what they're supposed to do. And they begin to fight. I had a long talk about this with C.G. Jung. He lived on the edge of Lake Zurich, and he had a little summer house right on the water's edge, and there were many swans present. And I was getting up after, at the end of a conversation with him, and we were beginning to walk back to the main house, and I said, isn't it true that swans are monogamous? And he said, yes. They are. He said, do you know, I have most interesting relationships between these swans, and many of my female patients who thought they were homosexual. Jung wasn't a sexual snob. I mean, he understood all the legitimacy of all kinds of sexual variation. But he said it has been a point of departure for our discussions. He said it's a very funny thing that when they begin to mate, they start fighting. And they don't know what it's all about, and then suddenly the fight turns into lovemaking. So that's what I mean. Underneath opposition, there is love. Underneath duality, there's unity. The Tweedledum and Tweedledee agreed. It's crazy. But that's the way it goes. But that's the way it goes. It's crazy. But that's the way it goes. It's crazy. But that's the way it goes. See, here's that weaving principle. The things hold together by over, under, over, under, over, that creates a stuff, creates fabric, it creates clothing, creates shelter, creates what we call matter. Matter, mater, mother, and also the same word maya, illusion. See, the world as a marvelous illusion.
It's crazy, but that's the way it goes. 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 It's crazy. 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 That's the way it goes.
A marvelous illusion. Marvelous illusion. Marvelous illusion.
That's the way it goes. It's crazy. That's the way it goes. It's
Marvelous illusion.
That's the way it goes. It's crazy. That's the way it goes.
It's making enough to stay. All right.
Trying to comment about the blackout to George. But George had gone out into the kitchen for a can of beer.
So, got the spray foam in all the way to the back. That's today's accomplishment. So, I'll pick up tomorrow. Might do a little bit more work today, but I'm kind of tired, so we'll see.
Something real sad on television. What was it they said? It's all kind of mixed up in my mind.
And